So welcome and thank you for coming out on this lovely rainy evening. My name is Alicia Philley and I am presenting a new artwork series and it's called Swimming the Potomac by way of Ranch Road 1. Ranch Road 1. And now I'm going to read from notes because that's how I felt like doing this stuff. So first, I want to start by thanking the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center for giving me the space and support to hang this new artwork and to talk about it. And I want to thank the Friends of the LBJ Ranch in National Historic Park for entrusting me with a section of wood that broke off from the historic cabinet oak tree during a storm several years ago. When he was president, LBJ often used the shade of this very tree to meet with his cabinet members, trusted advisors, and visiting dignitaries. This tree has witnessed many human lifetimes of history, with sprouting this very branch and the root systems to support it, long before there was a Texas White House nearby, and even before United States existed as a country. So I'm going to back up a moment here and explain why I'm presenting this work at the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center before it becomes part of a larger exhibit in April of more than 50 artists over at the LBJ Ranch. As some of you know, this past October I installed 70 abstract wood sculptures along the Woodland Trail, just back that way. When I was working on this art, which is called The Seeds We Plant, I saw an open call for artists to apply with ideas for making work from a broken live oak tree limb at the LBJ Ranch. I was excited by the possibility of creating artwork that engages with the legacies of both the President and the First Lady. As I made the cabinet oak artwork, a process that involved learning a lot more than I thought I already knew about the LBJ administration and their conservation efforts, I could not untangle Lady Bird from the story. It seemed fitting to bring the two projects together, if only for a week. My art practice for many years has involved painting on wood panels and using the wood grain to help me tell stories about how our lived environment affects our state of mind, memories, and health. So when I had this log milled in slices last fall, I was looking forward to seeing what the grain lines of this old tree had to say. I wasn't disappointed, and I was also somewhat surprised by what I found. Thick layers of bark peeled away in sheets to reveal a swirling mass of wood that looked and behaved like stone. I could feel the literal weight of gravity in this wood. It didn't hold a single straight line. Every year of growth was pressed together, twisting in on itself to make room for new layers. Cracks quickly formed after cutting the log open, a release of that internal pressure. And because the tree had been unwell when the limb broke off, I also found a network of tunnels, excavated most likely by carpenter worms, which crumbled open as I scrubbed and prepared the wood. All of these aspects of the wood are part of its life history. I chose to highlight rather than hide this in my artwork. I believe that we honor the past by seeing all of it. So as I spent months smoothing and carving each slab, it felt right to open up rather than fill those cracks, to pick at and further reveal the burrows along the wood edges. As you look at the finished work, you'll see the light shining through these openings or reflecting off iridescent paint that partially fills the hollowed channels. I also worked sparingly with my painted marks. I left visible the swirling wood grain in the dense dark center and flowing rows of pore marks on the lighter end grain. The tree's life is revealed through its cycles of growth and decay. I've never worked on raw, unprocessed wood before this, but I applied knowing I'd pick up a few new skills in my year of making The Seeds We Plant for the Wildflower Center. I also thought the first project would lead me toward ideas for the second, and this ended up being partially true as my confidence with sculptural work blossomed, but the second part, the idea for the Cabinet Oak project, did not fully coalesce while I was working out here. In fact, I found myself rather stuck, in a nice way to be sure, thinking about nature and how Lady Bird used her status as the First Lady to help fund roadside beautification, which I'm going to call rehabilitation. So I put on my previous hat of journalist and went off to find some interesting facts, some clarifying events, to help get my footing with the next steps of painting these beautiful slabs of ancient wood. During his time as president, LBJ signed either slightly more or slightly less than 300 pieces of conservation-oriented legislation. It's interesting that this number is not solidly agreed upon, but we don't have to get into the politics of that right now, so I just went with 300. That number was easy enough to find online, but what did it really signify about LBJ and the home where this tree had shaded his guests? I needed more. So I made an appointment to visit the archives at the LBJ Presidential Library. My only plan was to pull boxes of materials related to conservation work and see what surfaced. When I showed up there with my approval form to access the research floors, I was overwhelmed with the memory of my 7 or 8-year-old self gliding around the travertine smooth stone plaza. I was not born in Austin, but I spent my preschool to early elementary age years here, exploring the creek beds, rolling down grassy hills, and sometimes skating at the best outdoor roller rink, also known as the LBJ Presidential Library. That flash of memory made me feel so connected to a building I hadn't been around in many years. And it was my reminder that humans need stories to connect with larger abstract ideas. LBJ understood how to use storytelling to get people excited about, or at least willing to do, difficult work. When he signed the Water Quality Act in 1965, he gave a speech and a promise. With the signing of the Water Quality Act of 1965 this morning, I pledge to you that we are going to reopen the Potomac for swimming by 1975. The Potomac, which is a large river running through Washington, was at that point a river of decaying sewage, according to LBJ and anyone else who had smelled it. Apparently, the president's speechwriter felt he'd gone too far by coming up with that promise and advised LBJ to remove it from the speech. This was his response. No, damn it, I'm not going to take that section out. The only way you can get the bureaucracy around this town to move is to hold its feet to the fire. You've got to set a goal and tell those people you expect them to meet it. Maybe we won't clean up the Potomac by 1975. Maybe it'll be 1985 or 1995. But we won't clean it up at all if we don't establish some priorities and expectations. Well, it did take more than 10 years. In fact, it was just this past year that parts of the Potomac have been considered safe enough to swim in, and there's public pressure to make it legal for recreation. If you look at the artwork, you will see blue to blue-green marks and flowing lines that I painted. They represent the water, not just in the Potomac, but in the many rivers across the country that were either preserved or rehabilitated because of the Clean Water Act. This is just one in the hundreds of pieces of legislation that were foundational to the conservation work of today. As I picked through more boxes, I found Lady Bird everywhere. Her letters responding to questions about roadside rehabilitation, her detailed planning for trips from Washington to the ranch, her handwritten notes about seating arrangements for dinners at the Texas White House with close friends, advisors, and donors. I also discovered an amazing new biography about her written by Julia Swide. Listen to the podcast even if you don't read the book. It is just fascinating. So the author used the First Lady's recorded diaries, which she kept throughout her time at the White House. Many of them had not been listened to before Ms. Swide discovered them at the Presidential Library. The story she tells puts Lady Bird side by side with President Johnson, doing the work, not being seen, as women of that time were expected to do. So involved that I knew it made no sense to create a work about LBJ's legacy without including her in it. In addition to the blue-green line work, I painted 300 distinct marks in 300 different colors, each one signifying the conservation legislation. And the colors are matched to photos from the archive of wildflowers in bloom during visits that the couple made to the ranch. LBJ understood the power of a good story, of a strong promise. Lady Bird understood the power of nature. Over and again, I saw in her written plans and heard in her voice on that podcast that guests be taken down the local ranch roads, Ranch Road 1 being the one leading back to the house, when driving back from dinners or parties in Austin, so they could see the wildflowers in bloom. She understood that the smells and sights would help bring people to their side, that experiencing nature at its most inviting would help people, tie people to the land and make them want to preserve it and save it in the ways that she and the president wanted to. The final thing I want to point out about this work is the center section of wood here. It appears larger than the rest because it is two slabs joined together. I tried to make it rather seamless on one side, but still with a gap between because nothing's ever perfectly put together. And on the other side, it's a little more obvious that it's two different pieces of wood. This represents the president and the first lady, two very individual people, both strong in their own ways, flawed in their own ways, and joined together in ways I did not understand before embarking on this project. And I think that's enough of me talking. So want to say that if you would like to see some of the 50 other artworks that were made from this limb that broke off, they'll be on display at the LBJ Ranch in Historic National Park in the month of April, in the airplane hangar, which is, I think, such a great space to have work. And if you want to learn more about the Cabinet Oak Project and the work that they're doing to help rehabilitate and conserve the legacy of the home and ranch out there, you can go to their website, cabinetoakproject.org, and they'll be hosting a gala and fundraiser and auctioning off all the work.
Alicia, it's cabinetoak.org.
Oh, cabinetoak.org.
Cabinetoak.org. And we have
you.
all 53 of the artists that have submitted pieces on here. So.
Wonderful. And this is one of the board members.
Thank you. Thank you, Alicia.
Yes, thank you all for coming out. And I'll answer questions if you have them, but otherwise, if you want to go take a walk on the trail and see my other installation of work that's been out here for a little while and will remain through the end of April, you can do that too.
Yay.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. This is great. We're going to check it out. How exciting.